I've got these fins that I've carved, and I'm wanting to make silicone fins out of these, so I need to make a mold. However, I ordinarily make all my molds out of silicone, but I don't want to pour silicone into silicone because it tends to stick really bad. And even if you use release agents and sprays, it's really just a matter of time before you fuse your fin to the mold and then the mold's ruined. My first attempt at this was with plaster of Paris. I made it using the same process as I would with silicone, but obviously I used plaster of Paris as my mold material. As you can see, it kind of worked, but there's a lot of bubbles and imperfections, and I don't think it captured enough detail for my purposes. Going back to the drawing board, I came up with the idea to make a mold out of resin. And that's kind of different. I've never used this smooth cast without the microspheres in it, but this is what it cures out like. I don't know how good of a cast I got there, to be honest. You can see there's an awful lot of bubbling and off-gassing from the wood. I don't know, we may not get a very good cast out of that, but let's proceed and do the other half. I don't know how bad resin sticks to resin. It may not be that bad, but I'm not going to take any chances here. I've never made a mold out of resin before. I was able to get these apart and get all my fins out. Once again, there are a lot of bubbles, so this isn't going to work either. On to the next idea. So what I've got here is a 1/4 inch thick piece of poplar. It doesn't necessarily need to be poplar, but it needs to be a good flat piece of 1/4 inch wood. And I am going to lay these out kind of in the pattern that I want my mold to be in. This is going to be a top pour mold. So I think I'm going to lay it out kind of like this. I'm going to leave a little bit of space between each one, just for structural reasons. Let's go 9 inches. And then depth wise, we can go 3. All right, so let's go cut that out. We're gonna need 2 of those. The next thing I need to do is take this over to the bandsaw and cut it out. But I want this exact same cutout on both pieces, so I'm going to stack them and then tape them together. This is a 1/2 inch thick piece of plywood. This piece is 3 inches deep, and this one is 3.5 inches deep, and you'll see why here in a minute. But we need to get the same 9 inches wide. And go 9. And of course, once again, we're going to need 2 of those. I'm going to use this waterproof interior exterior wood glue. I really like using it. All right. Okay, and then let's make sure we get these back together in order. Alright, we'll tighten those up really good and then let it dry. Got these pulled back apart. We're gonna add these little wedges right in here on each piece, like so. So this will create kind of a funnel, basically, is what we're trying to do. And I'll just glue those in place with the same wood glue that I've got here. It's time to put the finishing touches on this, and the way I'm going to get my detail in there is I'm going to use some of my modeling clay that I use to make my silicone molds. Now this is a non-drying clay, but because this is sort of a prototype, my game plan is to use this clay for now. And then if it works, like I think it will, then what I might do is just pull this clay out of there. All right, here's kind of the moment of truth here to see how it worked. Problem is, it's wanting to stick to the fin more than it wants to stick to the board. Anyway, that's a little bit frustrating, but what I'm trying to do is I'll do that, and then I can put these two halves together, and then I can pour my silicone in there and make my fins. So I think the concept is sound, but I just cannot get things to release from this wood here. I may need to switch to something else. Maybe it's the clay. Maybe I need to switch to 2-part epoxy putty or something like that. I don't know. I'm gonna brainstorm that a little bit and we'll see if we can figure out a better plan. I need to rough up the inside of that. That wood's too smooth and things won't stick in it. So, make myself a little straight line guide here. After my failed clay experiment, I did some looking around trying to find some different options for doing these impressions. And I came across a couple of things, but the one I'm going to try today is this amazing mold putty. It's a two-part putty. You mix it together, you put it over your piece, let it cure for like 20 minutes, and you should have a perfect impression. Now, I did find out after I'd already bought it that this is actually, I believe, a silicone product. So I'm going to have to be very careful with making sure I have enough release agent on there when I pour my liquid silicone in there so that it doesn't stick really bad and ruin my mold. But part of the thing I like about this design is that I can put that putty in there and do my impression, and if that impression wears out, I can peel that out of there and make a new mold, and I'd be good to go with a really solid foundation to work with. I'm going to make a ball here because I need equal parts by volume or weight. Probably ought to weigh it, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to make a ball about that size. If that's not enough, we can just make up some more. Yeah, that's about right. All right, so we're going to knead these together. One of the easy ways to get a good mixture is to make a long piece and then twist it together like this. And that gives you a really good mixture. Let's do one more time and I think we'll be there. Like I said, we don't have a ton of working time, but it should be enough. I'm going to take my piece and I'm going to push it in there until my center line is right at the top of the wood there. Okay, then we're going to take our sculpting tool here and we're going to kind of scrape flat against the board here and cut that squeeze out a little bit closer. Now for this one, because it's really sharp, I've got more of a pointed one to work with so that I can get down in those points. All right, it was a little bit of a push to do all three at the same time. But we got it done, and I'm going to set this little excess piece off to the side here, and that's going to be my gauge to know when this is all cured. So we're going to let that set for 20 minutes, and then we'll come back and check it and see how it's doing. If you want to support the channel and look good doing it, you can now get your official Zimtex merchandise. Just click on the store tab or the link to my website in the video description. There you can find everything Zimtex, including gear, links to the products I use, and other cool stuff. Okay, it's been just a little over 20 minutes, and this is, I think, pretty set up. It's still a little squishy, which it's, you know, it's supposed to be. It's kind of a silicone product. So it's a little bit squishy, but it's very firm. So let's see what we've got here. Let's pull these fins out. I'm gonna try to do it as carefully as possible because I really want the wooden fin to come out and to have a perfect impression. Oh, hey, that was easy. That's got some good detail in it. I just popped right out of there. No problem. There's a teensy little bit of a bubble defect in there at some of these areas here, but I don't think it bothers me enough to try and recast it. I think I'm just going to roll with it and see what comes out. It may be awful, but I don't think it's that bad. So the next thing we need to do, of course, is the other half. I feel like we've given that enough time to fully cure. So I'm ready to make my first set of fins, and I'm going to start by putting a mold release agent on these areas, and I'm going to be using my normal silicone mold release spray. I recently made another video about experimenting with making silicone rubber fins, and if you haven't seen that video, you can check it out at the link up here. But this is one of those fins that I made, and interestingly enough, this is very close to the color that I'm wanting to use for this project. But basically, what I did was I used this silicone rubber from Let's Resin, and then I used pigment from this Ignite set that's a smooth-on product. I believe it's that one right there. So let's mix up some of that and pour us a fin set. Not really sure how much I'm going to need, so this first pour is going to be a little bit of a guess, and I'll probably go over rather than under. Let's do 25 grams of each. I'm not really going to measure pigment. It's kind of difficult to measure it. I'm just going to eyeball the color and get it pretty close to what I'm got in my mind. We do need to stir it first because it does tend to kind of settle a little bit. Okay, I'm going to clean this off really good. And we'll just get some more. Yeah, there we go. It's just got a nice deep color all the way through. No transparency left. Let's weigh our cup here and see how much we have left. And that way we can kind of write down what we need for next time. I do need to get another cup and zero it. We'll deduct 30 from the 50 that we made. So next time we need to use 20 grams total. So 10 grams of each to make a fin set. I'm going to make a notation of that here on the side. I'm just going to write 10 grams part A, 10 gram part B. Now moving forward, I know exactly how much silicone to make. So this has only been sitting for a couple of hours, but my cup of leftover here is like pretty much done already. So I'm gonna go ahead and open this up. I usually let it sit a little bit longer, but I'm kind of excited to see what we get here. Uh-oh. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. These have kind of fused together. I'm thinking maybe we can glue those back in with some maybe epoxy or something. So there's one top fin, which turned out really nice. Got a little bit of cleaning to do on it, but I think it's a good fin. Cool. That one came out nice. So the detail came out really nice on this fin, but I feel like we let it get a little too thin in a few places here. If you remember, one of these had some imperfections, this one did. Yeah, you can see there's some, there were some bubbles and whatnot in there. So what I think is, let's pull this one out. Let's remake this half to where it's deeper, since it's kind of messed up anyway. But overall, I think we're closing in on it. We got two good fins out of it, and then one that's very close. But let me remake this fin and then pour a new tail fin and get back to you about that. After reworking that tail fin mold, I think we got a much better cast out of it. I'm pretty happy with this. And now what we need to do is kind of trim these down a little bit. We've got a lot of flashing, as you can see on here. All right, I'm pretty excited to see what these look like. So I'm gonna pop those in there. I think that looks pretty sharp, and of course I'm going to paint this pectoral fin to match this bright neon color. I'm going to be trying something different that I've never done before, and that is I want to paint these silicone rubber fins. And in order to do that, I'm going to need to use a special kind of paint. And I looked around on the internet for a while, and I found Smooth On makes this Psycho paint system. It's originally kind of designed for, the special effects prosthetic industry. But you can see here it's for platinum silicone. And what you do is you mix up these two components and it makes a clear base to start with. And then you can add your pigment. And I'm going to be using Smooth On's Silc Pig pigments, which are specially formulated just for this. I got this little variety pack with a lot of colors. You can mix those and make whatever you want. But for this project, I'm just going to need the black. And then of course, I've got some mixing cups here for getting the proportions right. I've got a little brush here for mixing and painting with. And then I've got some vinyl gloves, which is what they recommend that you use for this application. I plan on doing a mix of brushing and airbrushing on this particular project. So in order to get this paint to go through your airbrush, you need to use a solvent, and they have a few recommendations for that. I happen to have naphtha in the shop, so that's what I'm going to be using. And then as far as my airbrush setup goes, I'm going to be using my older airbrush for this. And what I've done is I've swapped out the needle and nozzle with the 0.5 millimeter because I feel like this is going to be pretty thick and I want to be able to push it through there as easily as possible. Naturally, I'm going to be wearing a respirator while I do this, and I'm also going to have plenty of ventilation in the shop. But I am excited to see how this turns out, so let's get after it. think I've found a technique that works pretty good for doing these spots. I have to let my silicone paint get pretty thick. I've waited for about 15 minutes here after mixing it up. So I get a little bit on there and then put a spot. And you kind of have to do like a quick jerk like that to get it freed. And then if it leaves a little trail like that, I can use my sculpting tool here to kind of scrape that off of there. And then once I have my spot on there, I hit it with the hairdryer a few times to kind of speed up the curing process for that spot. I think these fins turned out pretty good, and because they're painted with silicone, they should be quite durable. You can see that they stretch and everything like they're supposed to. Now I will say that they are not easy to make. The dots in particular were very challenging and time consuming. However, painting a gradient over it was quite easy. It does require special procedures and safety equipment, but if you want a custom fin that's a little bit more interesting than a flat color, this might be for you. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so I can make more of the content you want to see. Also, feel free to leave a comment. I welcome your feedback and appreciate all of your support. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.